Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is Jill. I mainly do on this channel true crime and current events. So if you like this and it interests you, I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. And if you do like this video, let me know with a thumbs up, because I'm trying to get, what you guys want to see and what's interesting to y'all. So I'm just kind of trying to get my channel running smoothly. I've been working with my brother. My brother is a really big sound audio man in the industry, and he took the time to come over and kind of show me some pointers and things I could do to make my channel a little bit better. So I am working on that. I'm working on different editing tools, and it's a work in progress. I hope to have new editing by next week. So we'll see how that goes. It's just different because I always use my phone. So he's like, no, sister, you gotta do something else. He's all into all this editing and he's great at it, but I'm not. So it's gonna take me a while. So how have you guys been? I hope that the days have been good for you guys. I hope that, you've taken time for yourself. And, I know that we give so much to other people, and I'm certainly a giver. I'll put myself last every time. I want to make sure everybody I love and care about is taken care of. And, I don't treat myself that often to things, but I'm here to remind you that you need to treat yourself to things as well, because you're important, you matter, and we need you here, okay? So let's go ahead and get into what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so we're just going to start off with basically what I started finding interest in this case on. You all know that I live near Houston. I also live near Galveston, and that's where I go for the beach a lot of times. I know I've talked about it on my channel that we rent beach houses, and I just love the beach because it makes me feel at peace. So I'm down there a lot. So when stories pop up of things that have happened in Galveston or around where I live, it really interests me. So this happened to just pop up on, I think it was Netflix. It's called The Jinx. Okay, so I started watching the documentary The Jinx, and it is on a man named Robert Durst. And I started watching the documentary because I noticed that there was a movie called All Good Things with Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling is my favorite actor ever. I just love him. And I was like, so I watched the movie. It's Ryan Gosling and Kirsten Dunst. And he is playing none other than Robert Durst in the movie. So this movie is made about the life of Robert Durst without Robert Durst really in it yet. So we'll get to that later. So all these things kind of combined, I was like, wow, let me figure out what happened. Why was he in Galveston up the street from me, in 2001? So here we go. Okay, so it takes place at Galveston Bay, 2001. Okay, so Galveston has a lot of beaches. It has a lot of bays. People go in the beach, and then they go in the bay, they go fishing. So a young boy was fishing in Galveston Bay, and he noticed a torso of a human washed up. So he calls the police. The police go down to the bay. They notice lots of trash bags in this bay. This bay isn't very deep. So whatever was meant to sink there didn't sink very far. So they start noticing all these trash bags, and they bring them and they open them, and they contain body parts, severed body parts, all strewed out. Now, when I think about this, first of all, I'm like, who had the time to do this after they obviously murdered this person? Who brings these bags down to a bay and it doesn't even sink? All these things are running through my head. I'm like, this is just crazy. So one trash bag appeared to be open, but it was empty. It was almost like something had been removed. And later on, police would say that would be the decapitated head of the man that was later identified as Morris Black. Okay, so this is the severed pieces of Morris Black. But they didn't know that at first. They're looking through it. They're like, what's going on? Well, they find a piece of paper. So they get the newspaper from the open bag and they notice an address on it. So the cops go to, it's a really rundown, older apartment in Galveston. And they go to this address and they ask the, I guess the management or whatever, we need to look at this apartment. We found things and we need to get into this apartment. So the man said yes, apartment 2 is rented by a woman named Dorothy Siner. She is a mute woman. And so they get into the apartment. They said they noticed that the apartment was immaculate. It was clean, except for in the kitchen. They notice a drop cloth is in the kitchen, and around there are droplets of blood. Under the linoleum, they pick it up, and it has blood stains on it. So someone has attempted to clean up this apartment, but they didn't. They failed miserably. So they were able to get prints off of some of the parts found in the bay of the man, and they did identify him as Morris Black. Now, Morris Black lived in those apartments. He lived in apartment 1. Dorothy Siner lived in apartment 2. So after they got the search warrant, they went into the apartments. They see all of this suspect stuff. Well, they go through the trash, and in the trash is a receipt for a Robert Durst, and it's an eyeglass appointment. So they go to the eyeglasses store, and they're like, has this person come in to pick up his glasses? And they said, no, he has not. They leave a card. They say, if he comes in to pick up his glasses, I need you to call me immediately. So they go on about their investigation. So the cop later on received a phone call from the eye clinic stating that he had just come, this Robert Durst had just come to pick up his eyeglasses. So the cops rush because they want to get this person. They think that, he is in connection with this murder. And they pull him over. In the back of the vehicle, they see a bow saw, and they put 2 and 2 together. So they arrest him on suspicion of murder and, chopping up pieces of Morris Black. And his bail was set at $250,000 in Galveston. Okay, so I'm thinking, wait a minute. I know the way that the movie All Good Things started off. It started off with somebody dressed as a female walking down, dumping these bags into a bay. And the somebody that was dressed as a female happened to be Ryan Gosling, who was playing Robert Durst. So I'm thinking, okay, so he's cross-dressing as a woman. Robert Durst is Dorothy Siner. So I think the police are putting that together. I put it together, and I'm like, this is so bizarre. Why is this man cross-dressing as a mute woman and then chopped up his neighbor? And they said they were friends, Morris Black and Dorothy Siner / Robert Durst were friends, that they did hang out together, and now he's chopped up in the bay. So he's in jail. Well, they get a phone call saying that someone has posted bond for Robert Durst. His bond is $250,000. And the woman that has posted bond for him is named Deborah. Deborah is married to Robert Durst. So the police start looking. They're like, well, how does he have that much money? So they start looking up online, and it turns out he is from one of the richest families in New York City. They own like half of Manhattan. So they find out that he's a suspect in his wife's disappearance, Kathleen Durst, in 1982. So he's been in some trouble. Something's up. People are disappearing around him. What is going on? Well, in the trial, you're going to find out everything that went on, and you are going to be as shocked as me. So keep watching. So he jumps bail. Of course, he's a flight risk. He belongs to one of the richest families in Manhattan. Of course he's going to leave. So he did. So he was on the run for a while. I believe he was on the run for 2 years from the Galveston police, in connection with Morris Black's murder. And it was funny that, his brother was said that his family was scared of him at this point. I guess they figured, he may have murdered his ex-wife. We're scared of him. And his brother took out a restraining order on Robert Durst, that Robert Durst could not come near his family. Can you imagine? That's your brother, and you're so scared that he's going to come and show up on your doorstep. You take a restraining order out on him. That's crazy. But let me tell you, this story gets crazy if you haven't heard it. So he jumps bail, okay, and he's gone for a couple of years. I don't know if he's Dorothy Signer anymore, but they did say he had several aliases that he used. And when we get into court proceedings, he's going to explain to you about the whole cross-dressing Dorothy Signer, Robert Durst, how that happened. But so they go ahead and they start looking for him. Dorothy Signer and Robert Durst, so his alias and him, are on the FBI's 10 most wanted. They had to put both of them on there, but they were looking for him because let me tell you, in another city, they're looking for him too. So he rented cars, he opened credit cards in Morris Black's name. The neighbor that he allegedly cut up and dismembered and threw in the bay. He starts using him as an alias now. So he's opening up all these accounts. After 2 years on the run, he is spotted in South Salem. Okay, so someone in South Salem sees Robert Durst standing on near the back of the cottage where he and Kathleen used to live. So he's standing back there, and they report that. So it was that day happened to be their wedding anniversary. Robert Durst had shaved his head completely. And so he changed his look a little bit. And so they're on there looking for him. Well, do you want to know how he finally gets caught and brought in by police? Insane. Okay, so he is in Pennsylvania. He is at a Wegmans, right? Wegmans, I think that's how you say it. We don't have them here. We have H-E-Bs. So Wegmans, I believe, is like a really, known grocery store there. He is there stealing a sandwich and Band-Aids. That's how he gets caught. So, okay, so the police take him in. They handcuff him in the store, and they go to his rental car. And they said in his rental car, they found two loaded weapons. They found some green. They found an ID to Morris Black. They found $500 in his pocket and $38,000 in cash. And he elected to steal a sandwich and Band-Aids. Let me tell you, he's bizarre, and this case gets really bizarre. So, they bring him back. They extradite him back to Texas. So, Robert Durst is in jail in Texas. And you know how in jail they record your phone conversations. Well, he was recorded talking to his wife on the phone. In one recording, it was very strange because he said, it's a media circus. And he said, I don't know how to walk into court, like what kind of expression I need to have on my face. He said, should I be smiling? Should I be looking, mean? And, he's talking to himself to her, what should I have on my face? What kind of expression? And that's when I was like, well, there's a few things that can cause someone not to know of the correct expression when events take place. And one is certainly something that is on the spectrum of autism. And I believe it ended up saying that he did have a bit of Asperger's syndrome. And so that might explain why he's saying, how can I be when I walk into court? I don't know. But also we do know that serial killers and people like that don't respond well either in normal to these kind of circumstances. So my mind was already like, what's going on with this guy? So she tells him, he said, what, I'm just going to have a blank face or whatever. Just going to have a blank face. No expression is what he said. So his wife assures him that everything's going to be okay. Well, Robert Durst had hired an attorney at the beginning. And his wife said, absolutely not. This attorney cannot represent you. This attorney is going to plead insanity. And if they plead insanity, then it may be when you were married to me that you weren't thinking clearly. Therefore, I'm not going to get the trust in any of your money. So if you use him, I'm done. I'm divorcing you. So Robert Durst agrees not to use the man, not to go with the insanity plea. Instead, they get one of the two best attorneys ever. There's three of them, but the two that it talks about, they're awesome. I mean, they have to be pretty awesome for their client and who they're about to defend. Okay, so LA and New York think that, they got him. They're going to get him on this. He chopped up his neighbor and threw him in Galveston Bay, and he has pled not guilty. That's what he chose to plead. Not guilty by reason of self-defense. I'm sorry. Self-defense, y'all. Your self-defense, and then you chopped him up. So I just had, as you can see, I was like, what? Gosh, Galveston, Texas, how embarrassing. I had to watch the whole trial. So during the trial, they show the dismembered body parts of Morris Black. They show the jury what Mr. Durst has done to this man. So I think they figured we're going to put him up. I mean, it's a shot, right? So they put Robert Durst on the stand. And he comes up there. He's looking very old. He's looking frail. He's a smaller man. You wouldn't think this man just chopped his neighbor up into pieces. So he comes up there and he starts talking about his life. This is when they're trying to humanize him, basically, to the jury. And he starts talking about how when he was 7, his mother jumped off of the roof and fell, and took her own life. How he witnessed that, how his father left him to witness that, and how it really, hurt him. So they get through this, they start, asking questions. Jury's, into him now. They're like, well, maybe they're trying to play the pity card, basically. But he's convincing, I have to say. He was convincing. And they start asking him, tell us, Mr. Durst, why you moved to Galveston and how you became this deaf-mute woman named Dorothy Schneider. Why did you want to be this? So he starts telling that the New York Post was going to do another story on Kathleen, his missing wife. Now, Robert always claimed he never had anything to do with Kathleen's disappearance. And after quite a few years, she was declared dead by her family, at her family's request. and he did get a divorce, and the divorce says that she abandoned him. That's what he got a divorce on. So he's talking about how they're going to do another article on his wife's disappearance and how he's just crushed. He doesn't want to hear it anymore. He wants to just disappear. And what he did to disappear was move to 0.0 miles, Galveston, Texas, in this little town, and start cross-dressing as a woman, a mute woman named Dorothy Snyder, because he said he needed to be a woman because he didn't want to be Robert Durst anymore. So he was having an identity crisis. He didn't want to be a woman anymore. He wanted to be Dorothy Snyder, and Dorothy Snyder was in fact a friend of his, and they went to the same high school. So somehow he pulled her name, and he said, I knew I couldn't talk as a female, so I had to be a mute female, and this is my way of running away. That's how he explained him leaving. And he goes on to tell the jury how he would go to Walmart and he would buy women's clothes and things, and the jury kind of chuckled about this. And so, I think that they were trying to buy into Robert Durst and his stories and his defense, basically. So he said that he moved into these apartments. He was apartment 2, and apartment 1 was Morris Black. And Morris Black was seen as a grumpy neighbor by the other people, but how he had, and he speaks about how he and Morris Black became friends. And he said, they would go have coffee together, they would watch TV together. They became good friends. And he said he even stopped wearing the wigs and things around Morris because, he was his friend now, and he kind of figured it out. So what he says happened to Morris Black is that Morris Black was over his apartment, and he had received an eviction notice. And Morris Black was really angry about his eviction notice. So apparently Morris Black takes a gun while Robert Durst is in the bathroom and shoots the gun at the eviction paper. This is according to Durst, okay? Durst then comes out of the bathroom and he says, what are you doing? And he said he was very angry, and he said then they got into a physical altercation. So he said Morris had the gun. So he gets up and they demonstrate this struggle that Morris and Robert Durst had, and how it's very dramatic, and all the whistles are there. He's demonstrating it in front of the jury, and I pointed it like this, and this is what happened, okay? So he said Morris accidentally got shot. It was self-defense, and he got shot. That's his case. Now remember, he did dismember and dispose of the body still. So he's got to explain that out to the jurors. Now, the theory that the prosecution had was that Morris Black, he would frequent the library. They thought that Morris Black probably went to the library and Googled Robert Durst's name. If you Google Robert Durst's name, it comes up about his wife's disappearance. It also comes up that he is extremely, extremely rich. So they think Morris Black found out that he had millions and millions, and he threatened maybe to tell where Durst was, because remember, he was living under the alias of a woman. So they think that he threatened to say, you know what, I'm going to tell the police where you are because you're wanted, and one killing in Los Angeles and the suspected disappearance of your wife. And so I'm going to tell them where you are unless you give me money. And they think that Robert snapped at this point. Robert Durst snapped and killed him. And they think that he killed him by using a weapon to the back of the skull and pulling the trigger. They also think that's their theory of why his severed head was never found, because that would prove that Robert Durst actually executed him instead of he got shot while they were, fighting over the gun. So it wasn't self-defense. But Robert Durst is going to go on with this self-defense. I mean, how is he going to explain the bodies? How is he going to explain the severed body and the dismemberment? Okay, so get ready. So remember the charges, though, that they tried to bring on him. They said that the killing, it would be first-degree murder, and that means that they had to prove that the killing was premeditated, there was a motive, and that there was an intent with the dismemberment of the body. To me, it looked like he would be guilty. I mean, obviously. But here's the crazy part. They found him not guilty. And nope, can't make it up. They found him not guilty. It's like, how? I mean, how embarrassing, first of all. I mean, come on, Texas. Let's go. This is ridiculous. So they find him not guilty. Well, I start looking, into things. And I'm like, well, who was the jury? And you find out that there was one juror on that jury named Chris Lavelle. Chris Lavelle became very close with Robert Durst after he was acquitted and he was let out. He actually would speak out in the media for Robert Durst, and they had developed a personal relationship. He had been helping Robert Durst look for a luxury apartment in League City, which is near Galveston Bay. He would go on the record saying he thought that Robert Durst was the most unluckiest guy in the world, and he really spoke up for him. I'm thinking that, if I was part of the richest family, in New York City, that I would make sure one juror on there was not going to vote for guilty. And he got that in Chris Lavelle, and I would really like to know where Mr. Lavelle went when he kind of disappeared from the spotlight, what kind of mansion he's living on what island, because I'm going to tell you right now, he had to have been paid. In my opinion, he was paid off by Robert Durst. And that's that, because otherwise, I feel certain that they would have gotten a guilty verdict. And when some of the jurors came forward, they said that Chris Lavelle was the key in the non-guilty verdict. They said that he would keep reminding them that he said that you should consider the moment of killing. And the moment of killing, was this premeditated? Was he having a did he do this in the moment of killing him? So he somehow got into the juror's mind, and he swayed some of the jurors. So he was definitely, in my opinion, I think that he was bought. And I think some of the actions after the court kind of show that he was bought. So in a shocking, trial, and you are not guilty of, murdering this man. He did get some time for the dismemberment of the body and for disposing of the body, but they said he was not guilty. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be doing The Jinx and All Good Things. All Good Things was the movie written about Robert Durst, and The Jinx was a documentary that was also brought, and this documentary is actually insane. The whole thing's crazy, but what you're going to see in the next one is Robert Durst being in a part of The Jinx, and how he initially, how he pretty much sank himself, and what happened to him. Was he ever convicted of his wife's murder, his best friend's murder, and it's just crazy, y'all. So I'll be doing this again next Friday, but if you guys have any other cases you would like me to do, please suggest them for me. If some things I'm doing you don't like, you don't find interested, let me know in the comments. I do read the comments. I enjoy talking to all of you and seeing what you've written. And thank you so much for subscribing. I mean, I have over 500 subscribers, and I couldn't be more thankful. So this is part 1. We'll get into part 2 next time, and I will see you next week sometime. Thank you. Subscribe and like. Remember to do that for me, please. Thank you.